Good morning, colleagues. The House will come to order. Please all stand if you're able for the flag salute. This morning's flag salute will be led by Representative Kenny Geyer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. This morning's opening ceremony, you're in for a treat. We have the Obo Addy Project from Portland performing a traditional song from Ghana and featuring complex drumming. They are guests of Representative Lou Frederick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Courtesies, Representative Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Energized yet? Colleagues, I ask you to extend courtesies to our performers this morning from the Obo Addy Legacy Project. They have been in our community since 1986 as the Homowa African Arts and Cultures, recently renamed to honor the legacy and vision of Obo Addy, one of the founders. You'll hear more about Obo Addy in a few moments, but I want to thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank you, colleagues, for listening.
Thank you, Representative. Further courtesies. Representative Evans.
Thank you, colleagues. I just want to ask that we extend courtesies to honorary page Grace Borden. If you could stand, Grace. She's 12 years old in 6th grade, attends Abiqua Academy. She's involved in soccer, volleyball, track field, and drama, and we just appreciate you being here and being an honorary page today. So I ask us to extend courtesies.
Thank you, Representative. Further courtesies. Representative Hack.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. Please join me in extending courtesies to our page, Sarah Waters Vetter. She too is from Abiqua Academy and is in the 6th grade. Sarah is in leadership, track and field, volleyball, orchestra. She's in math counts. She plays tennis. She's on the swim team. She was in the John Hopkins Talented Youth organization, and she is also a black belt. So watch out, colleagues. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Representative, and welcome to our pages. Thank you for serving us today. Further courtesies. Representative Gallegos.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, today is a proclamation of Cesar Chavez Day, and in line with that, I'm so really very pleased to extend courtesies to Yuri Hernandez Osorio. Yuri is a social work student at the University of Portland, and she's also just taken the job as legal program organizer for Causa, Oregon. Yuri is from Toluca, Mexico, and she was raised in Coos Bay, so on the coast. She's a first-generation college student, graduating in May from the University of Portland, and will be attending the University of Michigan with the intention of earning an MSW in community organizing. Currently, Yuri works for Causa, Oregon, a nonprofit organization that fights for immigrant rights. As a legal program organizer, she facilitates citizen workshops. And she has served on a number of boards, NASW board as a student representative. She's been the president of the MECHA club there at the University of Portland, as well as vice president of the Social Work Club. I just want to say that her advocacy has earned her national recognition as a recipient of the Phi Alpha Award, which goes to only 3 individuals in the nation, 3 social workers in the nation. And in addition, she's just had a number of other awards, and I just am so pleased and very proud of her. She is one of the, as I said, first-generation college students, the ones that our aspirations to college program is so dedicated to as well. So thank you for being here, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Representative. Welcome, Yuri. We're glad you're here today. Further courtesies? Colleagues, I just want to point out we have folks with blue scarves today. They are here with the Credit Union Association of Oregon for Credit Union Day, so welcome to your capital. Further courtesies? Verification of quorum. Clerk will open the voting system to determine the presence of a quorum. Quorum is present. Messages from the Governor.
Madam Speaker, I'm directed by the Governor to inform you that she has approved and signed the following bill, House Bill 2175.
Messages from the Senate.
Madam Speaker, I'm directed by the President to inform you the Senate has passed Senate Bills 2248 and 250.
First reading, memorials and resolutions.
HCR 22, recognizing and honoring Army Specialist Taylor Daniel Marks, 1989 to 2009.
Measure read first time is passed to the Speaker's desk for referral. Standing Committee reports. Committee report file number 40 has been distributed. Special Committee reports. Special orders of business. Clerk will read the resolution.
House Resolution 3, in memoriam, Obo Addy, 1936 to 2012.
Question now arises upon final reading and adoption of H.R. 3. Representative Frederick.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I bring you House Resolution 3 to honor another pillar of our community, Obo Addy. He represents a different aspect of our musical tradition and the effort to develop and expand our cultural heritage while keeping a hold on where we've been musically and culturally. Obo and his wife Susan, who is sitting on the aisle there as well, founded the Homoa African Arts and Cultures in 1986 as a virtual cultural center, providing opportunities to learn and interact with these traditions in schools, parks, community centers, and performance venues all over the country. Obo Addy was renowned as a leader, a teacher, an entertainer, and an artist. Under his leadership and vision, and continuing after his death, the Obo Addy Legacy Project produces major artistic performances, teaches in K-12 and college-level schools, and produces new compositions. Obo Addy was the epitome of a teacher, someone whose influence continues long after he's gone, with his students producing new works as well and keeping the culture alive. I urge your aye vote to honor this teacher, performer, community leader, and cultural treasure. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Frederick, would you like to close?
No, thank you.
Those who are of the opinion that the resolution should be adopted will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will open the voting system. Representative Springer, how do you vote? Springer votes aye. To Susan and the Friends of Obo Addy, it's really wonderful to have you here today. I had the great pleasure of meeting him and listening many times to his music. And thank you for carrying on his legacy. And while we are saddened by his passing, we know that his music will carry on through your guidance. So thank you very much. On behalf of the Oregon House, I want to thank you. H.R. 3, having received a constitutional majority, is declared adopted. Propositions and motions. First reading of House bills.
House Bill 3508 relating to unemployment insurance benefits. House Bill 3509 relating to unilateral pricing policies and declaring an emergency. House Bill 3510 relating to the form of legislative measures. House Bill 3511 relating to the computer science, invention, technology, and engineering revitalization grant programs and declaring an emergency.
Bills read first time are passed to the Speaker's desk for referral. Second reading of House bills.
House Bill 2051 relating to criminal trespass. House Bill 2437 relating to traded sector industry development activities by the Oregon Business Development Department and declaring an emergency. House Bill 2629 relating to notice of maturity of rural rental housing loans. House Bill 2850 relating to the effectiveness of notices of lapse for certain insurance policies and declaring an emergency. House Bill 2893 relating to savings promotion raffles and declaring an emergency.
Bills read second time are passed to third reading. Consent calendar. Colleagues, we have one item on the consent calendar today. Clerk will read the bill and a short summary.
House Bill 2259 relating to motor vehicles weighing 26,000 pounds and more operating under special transportation permits, modifies authority of Department of Transportation to issue variance permits to operate self-loading log truck.
Question now arises on third reading and final passage of House Bill 2259. Those who are of the opinion the bill should pass will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will open the voting system. House Bill 2259, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Third reading of House bills. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 5017, relating to state financial administration and declaring an emergency.
Question now rises upon third reading and final passage of House Bill 5017A. Representative Buckley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, colleagues, House Bill 5017 is the budget bill for the State School Fund. The Joint Committee on Ways and Means recommends a budget of $7.255 billion for the State School Fund, with $6.913 billion in general fund resources and $342.1 million in lottery funds. This $7.255 billion will be combined with another $3.7 billion in property taxes and other local revenues for distribution through the school fund formula. In addition, House Bill 5017 includes a $3.3 million in other funds expenditure limitation, primarily for payment of local option equalization grants. The Joint Committee also approved up to $1.6 million from the State School Fund to be allocated to the Oregon Virtual School District Fund, $2.9 million to be transferred for local option equalization grants, and limited the expenditures for national normed assessments for 10th graders to $968,000. Two new allocations, or carve-outs, are established as part of House Bill 5017. The first allocates up to $12.5 million from the State School Fund for English Language Learners programs, with $10 million of these funds directed to 30 to 35 low-performing schools. Another $2.5 million is for assistance to other districts to carry out the statewide English Language Learners Plan. The second new allocation is for just under $2.4 million to provide free lunches to those students currently eligible for reduced-priced lunches. The bill also assumes the passage of bills that increase the high-cost disability grants by $34 million, reduces facility grants by $5 million, and continues the small high school supplemental for the 2015-17 biennium. House Bill 5017 also includes a trigger dedicating 40% of the positive difference between the 2015-17 general fund resources estimated in the May 2015 forecast and the corresponding amount from the March 2015 forecast to the State School Fund. The Joint Committee on Ways and Means recommends approval of House Bill 5017 as amended. Colleagues, this is the State School Fund proposal for the next 2 years. How did we get here? I'm going to talk for a few minutes about 25 years ago. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about 6 years ago. I'm going to talk for a few minutes about 2009, 2011. And I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes about 2 months ago. 25 years ago, our state passed Measure 5. And in 25 years, we have not resolved the challenge that we gave ourselves for the passage of Measure 5. Measure 5 basically took the main responsibility for the State School Fund and took it from local taxation and gave it to the state as its responsibility out of the state budget. But there was no additional resources, no additional revenue came with Measure 5 to fund our schools. And if you recall, Governor Barbara Roberts went on a statewide campaign as the centerpiece of her governorship. She went statewide and campaigned for a sales tax for education. She gave it her all. The voters did not approve it. That sales tax failed, and we have never again made a serious attempt to really resolve this issue. And every year since, we have come here to Salem, we've campaigned and said we're going to fight for education, we're making education our priority, and we've come here and we've patched together budgets. And in really good economic times during the 1990s, it wasn't so apparent because the economy was zooming up and we were able to invest a little bit more and kind of hold it steady, even though we started to see that our education funding for community colleges and university was starting to trend down. We were kind of holding it together during the 1990s. In the past decade, it fell apart. We had the recession in the early 2000s, and we had cuts in all areas of the budget. We started to rebuild during the middle part of that last decade, and of course, we got hit by the Great Recession of 2008. In 2009, the Kulongoski administration put forth the Reset Commission. At the end of Governor Kulongoski's term, he gathered together what he felt were some of the most capable people in our state and said, our state has a crisis, not only in the Great Recession, but we've never resolved the funding issues that came with Measure 5. We've never been able to solve this puzzle. And he gave the Reset Commission the task. How are we ever going to do this? How are we going to stabilize our budget and get to a place where we can actually invest in education at the level that we all know that we must for our state to thrive? And the Reset Commission had several recommendations. And we've gone after those recommendations. Even as we've worked through the recession to bring our state forward, we've gone after those recommendations. One of the primary recommendations was the state must find the way to hold down the increase in health care costs, because that part of the budget is expanding so rapidly, it is eating away our ability to fund education. And there's been a massive effort in the state of Oregon to hold down the increase in the cost of health care, and we've succeeded over a number of years. In the Oregon Health Plan, the cost can go up no more than 3.4%. In the Public Employee Benefits Board, their cost increase for state employees this year, 0%. Remarkable work done across the board. Another recommendation from the Research Commission, we have to hold down the cost of public safety, otherwise we'll keep building additional prisons and we'll continue to fund the Department of Corrections at a level that's higher than our university budget. And tremendous work went into that effort. How do we hold down the public safety costs across the board, across the state? People put their energy into that effort to hold down the public safety costs. And we have succeeded thus far in avoiding building that next prison. That $600 million that the state budget would have to hold for the rest of this decade for that prison. So that part of the Reset Commission has been addressed. They also brought up PERS, colleagues, and they said, in this recession, the PERS system is going to lose a significant amount of money. It's going to destabilize us again. And they gave the task to the legislature again, said you must address this. And those of you who were last couple of years, you know that was not fun in any way, shape, or form. That was a grind. That was hard. That was difficult. But this legislature came together and we ground it out. And we found the way to do reform, to stabilize PERS, and hold down the increase in costs on our school system, which was our goal to do. The last task that the Reset Commission asked us to do was to look at our revenue collection and finally resolve the Measure 5 problem that our state has never resolved. And colleagues, we still have not done it. Let me talk for a minute about 2009. When we went into this recession and the budget was collapsing, we took the Ways and Means Committee around the state, and we heard from communities everywhere in the state, give us some certainty, give us some stability, help us get back on our feet. And there was a tremendous effort statewide. And I give tremendous credit to the teachers and the administrators in our school districts statewide who worked so tremendously hard to hold together our schools and still give kids the educational opportunities that they need and they deserve. They did tremendous work to accomplish that, even while their budgets were being slashed because of the recession. But they held our public education together. Our community college faculty, our university faculty, they held our public education system together. In 2011, as you recall, those of you who are here, we had a split majority in the House. And my Republican co-chair and I were negotiating on this K-12 budget with Senator Devlin. And part of the agreement we came to, because my co-chair had heard the same stories I had on the Ways and Means tour, he had heard from districts, and he had an idea that he thought very, very strongly of. He said, we've got to fund K-12 early. We've got to get the budget out for districts. And this has been brought up many sessions before, been debated many sessions before, and we came to what was actually a classic compromise. My Republican co-chair really wanted to get the K-12 budget out first, get it to districts, and I understood that. I wanted to tap into the Education Stability Fund to try to get the funding level up higher for our districts in order to try to get them some stability to work from. And that was the compromise we made. We accessed more from the Education Stability Fund than was first proposed, and we agreed to move the budget early. And we did it. We got it done, and we tried to help move things forward. In this last budget year, 2013, we made the largest single investment in K-12 in our state's history through the work of all of us here, $1 billion in the K-12 budget for 2013-15. But colleagues, right now we're looking at 2015. 2 months ago, Senator Devlin and I released a framework, and we released it early to make it clear that it's a red flag for our state. And if you read the framework, I know all of you probably read every single page of it, but in the opening narrative, we tried to make it very clear. We have not resolved this question of 25 years, and we are looking at a situation of inadequate education budgets as far as the eye can see, 2017, 2019. There is no other path unless we come together as a state and wrestle with this and try to finally resolve this. In the budget before you today, there are great things in this budget. We're funding full-day kindergarten, but I know that we still are not getting our schools to where we need to get to. This is not what I came here for. I did not come here to shortchange, to not to get our kids what they need. I came and tried to give them everything that they need. But the budget we have today is the best that we can do under the resources we have. We have tremendous needs in public safety. We have tremendous needs in the human service area. This budget sets a floor, sets a trigger at the May forecast, and makes an investment in our state that we start with and we continue on as the budget works forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Good morning, colleagues. I rise in opposition to House Bill 5017. I thank my good colleague. But with billions and billions and billions more, each biennium, when is the time? When will it ever be enough to make a true commitment to K-12 education funding? Billions. This biennium alone, $1.8 billion more, 10% general fund, lottery fund increase. Last biennium, billions more, with a 9.8% increase. The previous biennium, billions more, 8.9% increase. We've had increases the last three biennium. We all know what the recession did. But the fact is, when you compare things from 10 years ago, when we said, just wait until we have the revenue, then we will have the commitment, then we will make the investment. In just over 10 years, 70% more in our general fund, lottery fund budget. 70%. Tremendous increases in revenue the last three biennium. Multiple tax increases. We have asked, and the revenue has come. When will it ever be enough, colleagues, to make that commitment? The fact is, we're either in the middle or above, depending on whatever rankings you look at the revenue we bring in as a state. We're 19th in total state and local revenue. This is all from the Legislative Revenue Office. It's in the basic facts document. It's the second document on the website. You can pull it up right now. We're number 5 in personal income taxes per person. We're number 11 in total revenue as a percentage of personal income. We're at number 10 as a percentage of total state personal income. All of that culminating in the numbers that I just talked about, a 70% increase in revenue. We do not have a revenue problem. Colleagues, apparently we have a commitment problem. If not now, not this biennium, if we're not going to make this fundamental shift back to where we were 10, 15 years ago, where nearly 45% of our general fund, lottery fund budget went to K-12 education, if we're not going to make this commitment now, when the economy is doing well in Oregon, when we're bringing in billions and billions of dollars more to our state economy, when will we make it? When will the shift occur? When will the investment occur? If not now, when, colleagues? I want to thank the good carrier for his hard work. We know he does tremendous work, along with the other co-chair, the senator. But when are we going to make this commitment, colleagues? We have tremendous new revenue. For that reason, I ask that we vote no, that we don't approve this budget, that we take the time to make the commitment to spend the money that we have, the billions that we have, on our kids. Colleagues, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Comp.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
I welcome all of you, our friends in the gallery today. We saw our students leave and go to a tour. And when people come here to the Capitol, my good friend Peter Courtney, Senate President, talks about how it's our Capitol. And what we're going to do today, it's not what we're going to try, it's what we're going to do today is going to support our children. I have been a school board member, a teacher, a principal, nearly 30 years. My top priority in those 30 years, beyond being a mom, first of all, is strengthening our schools. The recession did make deep cuts. The cuts are felt in every school. Huge class sizes. We lost 7,000 teachers. Teachers that worked their hearts out day in and day out to support our students. Again, we lost shortened school days. And it really hurts when we hear such a good presentation as we did this morning of a musical genre that I don't know that's taught in any of our schools, but the arts were cut, elective classes were cut. That all happened during our recession. Salem-Keizer, our own school district right here, had to cut over 200 teachers. North Salem, where I serve, is in really still dire straits to provide the services for high poverty students that speak more than one language and have many challenges in front of them. As our presenter shared, we've come a long way, but we do have a long way to go. We fought to turn the corner for our schools and pulled out of the recession. We added $1 billion in 2013. That was the largest investment we have ever done for the state of Oregon. Today we are voting on a budget that it's not going to go backwards, it's going forward somewhat, but we're maintaining. We're not having to have those cuts. This is a historic investment. This K-12 budget is 25% increase over what we were able to send to our schools in 2011. $600 million more than the historic boost that we approved in 2013. Colleagues, by approving this budget, we can make history by funding, for the first time, free all-day kindergarten. What a better start for all of our children. They're not going to be in a daycare center where they're watching TV or just playing. They're going to be learning. We have been fighting to prioritize our schools, and the tides are starting to change. We've had tremendous support from our public, our businesses, and all those people that say, we will have the students of the future to make Oregon economically stable. Colleagues, I urge you for a yes vote today to guarantee this funding. It's not going to go any lower, that this is the budget that our schools can budget on and prepare, and that the other thing that I know that I'm still doing, we need to continue to look at how we can do cost savings in our schools and find creative solutions wherever we can. Teachers do that every day. And I can't say enough about the dedication that we have in our schools and of the teachers and people that here in our body that have served. And I thank you, and I urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Smith-Warner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill?
To the bill.
Thank you. Colleagues, I rise today in support of House Bill 5017. As a mother of 2 kids in Portland Public Schools, I know firsthand the critical role that Oregon's public education system plays in the lives of our children and of their families. Expanding access to high-quality early childhood education is one of the best long-term investments that we can make as a state. And today, we have the opportunity to make history, as my fellow legislator just mentioned, by providing funding for every child to attend full-day kindergarten in Oregon for the first time ever in our state's history. In 2011, the legislature passed legislation to require free full-day kindergarten because study after study has shown that it results in better student performance and a stronger foundation for future academic and social success. This year, we can live up to that promise by funding full-day kindergarten to give all Oregon kids a chance to live up to their full potential. High-quality early childhood education is especially critical for low-income kids, and this budget will help to level the playing field for them. Providing free full-day kindergarten will also be a major help to working families throughout the state. In today's economy, having two working parents is a necessity for many families. Helping working Oregonians to balance the needs of their jobs and their families should be an economic priority for all of us. Expanding access to free full-day kindergarten will ensure Oregon's kids have the best opportunity to prepare for school and long-term success. I urge your aye vote on House Bill 5017. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
In the 2013 session, this body reversed a decade-long trend of disinvesting in K-12 education by making a major reinvestment in kids. And we heard a little bit about that earlier today. If you remember, at that time, the economy was starting to rebound, and we had additional revenue available in the general fund, and we all took seriously the 40-40-20 aspirational goal for educational outcomes for this state. We made this major reinvestment in K-12 because we were committed to as a bipartisan body to do what was best for kids. We then built on that good work in the 2013 special session, where we were able to dedicate an additional $100 million to K-12 from a revenue increase on large C Corps in Oregon. And as we came back into this session, the anticipation across the educational community is that we would be able to build on that good bipartisan work and really begin to move the needle on student achievement, because we desperately need to. I think we all could agree that knowing where Oregon ranks nationally with our high school graduation rate, the deplorable length of our instructional year that we have for our students, that we would all agree that the only way to go is up. And it needs to have begun yesterday. Because every day we delay in getting serious about providing our students and teachers with the resources that they tell us they need to be successful puts us that much further away from 40-40-20, which brings us to today. A $7.255 billion budget sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But when you understand the realities that exist at the local school district level, you begin to understand that this budget falls short of meeting the needs, and why this is, in fact, a cuts budget. You see, in the next biennium, we will begin to fully fund all-day K, as we've talked about today. It's a great program. I strongly believe in it, and I endorse it heartily. But it also means that we'll be adding over 25,000 new students to the funding formula. And when you consider both the increased cost for fully funding all-day kindergarten, along with the typical 3 to 4% per year roll-up costs that exist for districts as they meet their personnel obligations and to maintain their essential service level, this budget clearly falls short, and there will be cuts. And it means that instead of building on that good bipartisan foundation and building on that good bipartisan momentum that we began last session for public education, we will be sliding backward again. Colleagues, we've been told that we must take action today to pass this budget because school districts need budgetary certainty. Well, let me tell you what that budgetary certainty means for me and in my district, and what a $7.255 billion budget will mean for us. It means that when I go back to Hood River next Wednesday night for a school board meeting, our superintendent will present us with a plan to cut about $900,000 from our budget. Because this budgetary certainty means that we have to prepare for the plan that's in front of us. This budget means that we will be reducing about 12 FTE in Hood River. In David Douglas, it means about 30 to 35 FTE. In Gresham Barlow, it's about 50, and on and on and on. We've all seen the emails. We've all seen the correspondence in our inboxes these last few weeks. And because of our collective bargaining agreements that we have in place, it means that we must inform employees of potential reductions in force prior to layoffs. And these notifications will need to go out very soon. The pink slips will be in the mail again. What do you think this will do for teacher morale across our state? What do you think this will do for the morale in communities across Oregon where parents already have kids in classrooms that are overcrowded? And what do you think it will do to our ability to attract the best and brightest to the teaching profession in the state of Oregon? I'm the proud parent of one of those best and brightest. My daughter Natalie is going to graduate with a teaching degree from Seattle Pacific later this June. And her lifelong ambition is to be able to come back to her home state to work with ELL students and to pour herself into those kids and to help them attain language proficiency. But when she looks at what's going on in Oregon, that dream begins
Representative, excuse me a moment. Representative Krieger yields his time. Please continue. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, colleague. Thank you, Madam Speaker. That dream begins to look pretty faint, because why would you hitch your fortunes to a state that can't adequately provide the resources necessary to keep teachers employed? And these sad budget-cutting plans will play out all across Oregon later this spring. Not because we don't have the financial resources, we do, but because we apparently don't have the collective will to put kids first in our budget-making plans. Colleagues, the economy is improving. We have the resources available in the general fund to produce a no-cuts budget for schools. And as someone who has been an enthusiastic supporter of 40-40-20, along with many of you, I fear that approving this budget today means that 40-40-20 may just become another one of those empty promises in the line of far too many empty promises that we have had in this state. So, colleagues, let's do what's best for kids today. Let's vote no on this budget. And let's not rush to approve a budget that will only strengthen our hold on number 49 in the nation. Collectively, colleagues, we can do better. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Reed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, I had the chance to vote on this bill in committee, and before I voted aye, I shared some of the reasons that I was doing so, and I want to do that again today. I've been hearing from a lot of my constituents, parents, teachers, and students on the education budget, and I think that's really good because this is an important issue, and it says a lot about us and about our future. Very nearly everyone who has contacted me has been dissatisfied with the budget we will vote on today, and I share that frustration. It is not enough. It's not enough to make up for years of disinvestment and cuts, even despite the significant improvement that we made in the last biennium. And it's especially frustrating that we're in this situation given the otherwise good news about our economy. But I think there are a number of reasons to vote for this bill, and I want to share two that are particularly persuasive to me. One is certainty. We've heard for years from school districts around the state that one of the best things we can do for them is to pass a budget early to give them the certainty to plan for the next 2 years. And with this proposal, with this budget, we have the chance to do that. In fact, I'm told that we are on track to pass a school budget earlier than at any other time in the past quarter century. I think that's significant. Second, I think it's very important that we view this as a floor, not as a ceiling. For me, this is not the end of the conversation about education funding. But by locking in this floor, we can proceed to do all the other things that we have to do while keeping in mind the very critical importance for us to continue to boost education funding. That's important too. And there is more we can do. I've been impressed by the earnest and sincere words from our colleagues all around the floor and all around the state today and in the remonstrances that we've heard over the last few weeks. And I hope that those words are going to translate into action as we have opportunities in front of us. The current revenue forecast suggests that we're going to have a kicker, and I hope that we will take a serious look at devoting some of those resources to our reserves and to education. With the trigger language that you've already heard about in this bill that obligates any increase in the next revenue forecast, 40% of that to go to education, I think we're on track to do very good things. There's lots more to do here, ladies and gentlemen, but I have confidence that we can do it, and I hope we will. I hope you'll join me in voting aye. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Susan McLean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
To the bill.
Thank you. To the bill. I just got out of the classroom this last June after 42 years, and I loved my profession as a teacher, and I feel that that profession as a teacher was really one of the reasons why I chose to serve down here this year. I really have listened to all of my colleagues today, and I've taken seriously all of the comments that have been made, and there's one item in common that we have, and that is we want to do the best we can for our schools, for our communities, and for our kids, all of us. And I think it's extremely important that we remember that we have in front of us something that shows we want to continue that investment. And we want to continue that investment with starting with this vote today. And this vote today allows us to take that first step in this budget cycle to really consider what the needs. And as the representative who spoke in front of me said, this is the floor. This is the first step. This is the beginning. This is reinvestment continuing. This is a budget that brings some very new and important elements to the school. It brings early education, it brings full-day kindergarten, and it brings some really important funds to places that really need it. All 197 school districts have to deal with high-need services. And within this budget, you will discover that increasing the amount of the dedicated investment for high-cost disabilities actually puts more money back into the classroom in those school districts with high proportions of high-need students. You will know that the high-cost disability account, for those of you who have been here, was established in 2003. And it's a grant program that's designated and designed to reimburse students and schools for those students and their eligible costs and their eligible services. This budget will take into account from $18 million to $35 million to help in that grant program to reimburse those schools, small and large, all over the state that are going to be hit again because they want to do the right thing and they want to serve those students. I'm going to be voting today as the first step in this budget process for making sure that we do have this floor, we do have the ability to continue the investment, and that we are really working hard to use those dollars in a smart way so that the local jurisdictions can continue to do the good job that they have been doing and will continue to do with these resources. A budget today is just the beginning. This vote today is just a beginning. I ask you to vote yes on House Bill 5017 as the first step in continuing our investment in our schools. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. For the discussion, Representative Post.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill?
To the bill.
Thank you. I, first of all, too, want to thank the co-chair from this body for the hard work. I really appreciate it. I, as a radio guy, can't stand reading scripts, but I'm going to so that I don't go all Spock on you or anything. Colleagues, I don't serve on a budget committee. I don't serve on an education committee. But this bill before us today raises an issue that's near and dear to my heart. And that would be because I've spent the last 26 years of my life married to a public school teacher. And let me assure you, I have had quite the personal education about what is right and what is wrong with funding for our public schools. I want to be very clear. I support full and complete funding for our K-12 education. I believe that HB 5017 will not, and I repeat, will not accomplish that. I've received, as you have, many emails and letters from concerned citizens, teachers, parents, talking about the inadequate education funding package that is being pushed through this building, and sadly, I have not been able to offer them much help. When two of my own superintendents in my district, the Newburgh School District and the Salem-Keizer School District, wrote to me, I wanted to relay their concerns to this body, and so I read to you. Dear Representative Post, I am writing to advocate for a funding level of $7.5 billion for K-12 education this legislative session. Salem-Keizer schools would be losing $70 per ADMW at the current proposed funding level of $7.255 billion. We have an extended ADMW of $51,179, which means the total revenue loss to us would be $3.5 million at the currently proposed funding level. Our school district is still trying to rebuild after the massive cuts of $144 million from 5 or 6 years ago. The current proposed funding level will not give us the ability to make significant investments in our schools. It would not help us address overcrowding, aging facilities, old and failing technology, outdated instructional materials and technology, and many other key supports to education. Under this funding level, we will need to reduce critical reserve accounts to implement full-day kindergarten. We hope you will consider funding schools at $7.5 billion. At this level, we could fund full-day kindergarten, preserve programs, and begin to lower class sizes. We could also begin to address overcrowding, old and failing technology, outdated instructional materials, and other aging infrastructure. The state expects more of our students in our schools than ever before. On behalf of the 40,000 students in Salem-Keizer Public Schools, I ask you to please consider funding the state school fund at $7.5 billion. Thank you for reading this letter. Thank you for your service to the students and families in our school district. Sincerely, Christy Perry, Superintendent, Salem-Keizer School District. Dear Representative Post, I have only been in the state of Oregon for 3 years, yet it is clear to me that we have a system of funding for K-12 education that puts our students in our state at risk well into the next 3 decades. K-12 education in Oregon is in jeopardy of taking 2 giant steps backward as you try to pass a $7.255 billion budget. You cannot have a thriving economy with subpar education funding. Please advocate for the children of Oregon by calling for a budget of at least $7.5 billion. Currently, under the status of Oregon's education system, Oregon has the lowest graduation rate in the country. Oregon is 49th in the nation in class size. Oregon students receive on average 1 instructional year less in their K-12 education compared to the national average. Oregon spends about 88% of the national average per pupil K-12. Oregon is 46th in state education expenditures on K-12. K-12's share of the Oregon state budget has dropped 6% to 39% since 03-05. The state's economy is expected to grow by 11% in the next biennium. This is what $7.255 billion in K-12 funding would mean for our school district, Newburgh. Newburgh will receive $78 less per student next year compared to our 2014-15 funding level. It is nearly $2.84 million short of what Newburgh needs to maintain current programs, add full-day kindergarten, operate a full school year, and replace curriculum materials and outdated technology. The cost of implementing full-day kindergarten is not covered. We would have to consider cutting teachers or days of school. Our projected fund balance in 15-16, 16-17 would drop below 3%. The 626 aging student computers in our schools would need to be replaced, and our outdated technology infrastructure will have to last even longer. What we are doing to children today is going to impact Oregon and our economy over the next 3 decades. I am counting on you, Representative Post, to vote to invest in Oregon's future, and that starts with $7.5 to $8 billion investment in K-12 education for 2015-17. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Dr. Kim LeBlanc Esparza, Superintendent of the Newburgh School District. I also received this letter from a Newburgh School Board member.
One moment, Representative. Representative Whitsitt yields her time. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative. Dear Representative Post, I have been a member of the Newburgh School District Board of Directors for 12 years now, and during that time, the state of Oregon has always struggled to provide adequate and stable funding for the students of Oregon. Our children deserve an education that prepares them to compete with graduates across the nation and throughout the world. A $7.255 billion budget for K-12 education is just not adequate to educate our children. Please call for a budget of at least $7.5 billion. Thank you for your consideration, Representative. Regards, Misty Vondracek, Director, Newburgh School Board. All I am able to tell these educators and parents and superintendents in my district is this: I and my colleagues here hear you. We understand that full K-12 funding is absolutely vital. We have the money to fully fund education, and we want to start that funding at $7.5 billion. As I opened, I am married to a wonderful, beautiful, loving wife of 26 years who has been a public school teacher for 27 years as a special education teacher. She loves her job. She loves her students, and they are incredibly special to her. But I have watched her fight every year to match her increasing workload as her class sizes become larger and larger. I want to tell you something. This is shocking. This year, her class size has peaked. She is now between 45 and 48 kids, special ed kids, in her, not she sees them in a group setting in various different settings, in her classes 5 times per day. She teaches 45 to 48 kids in her classroom. Physically teaches 45 to 48 kids every day, 5 to 6 times a day with no prep time, I would add. That's been taken away from her. They don't have time. While my wife is a wonderful teacher, and she's given every bit of herself to her students, like so many other teachers in Oregon, how can we possibly expect that our students, including our special education students, are receiving the kind of instruction and motivation they need to succeed in the classroom? My wife fills out reams of mandatory paperwork for the federal government and the state government, and it never lets up. She leaves our house every day at 6:15 to drive about a half a mile to work, and she gets home every night at 5 to 5:30, and that's not when she's volunteering as a basketball, football, volleyball coach, snack bar, whatever it might be. She doesn't necessarily want to be paid more, and I want you to hear that. She's not a teacher saying, I want more money. She wants help. She wants more teachers. She needs smaller class sizes. She needs we, the people of Oregon, to step in and say, what can I do to help you, Mrs. Post? What can I do to help our kids? Unfortunately, the members in control of this body do not share my opinion. Instead of making K-12 education a priority, they are squandering time and energy, which ultimately means money, on other things, putting our kids and our future at risk. Things like a flawed DEQ program, a costly motor voter system, and countless other pet projects that do nothing for those kids. Colleagues, K-12
Excuse me,
funding
Representative. Representative
Yes.
Reed, for what purpose are you in the queue?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would respectfully inquire as to whether the comments of the representative are germane to the K-12 budget.
Anything in particular, Representative?
I think impugning the motives of other members.
Representative, please be careful with your opinions of what we are and are not doing, because it could be perceived as impugning other people's motives here on the floor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a paragraph to go. Colleagues, K-12 funding should not be used as a pawn in a larger budget debate. Our kids' future should not be held hostage. Please listen to the hundreds of educators across the state and commit to fully and completely funding education. Please, I urge you to vote no on the inadequate solution that is House Bill 5017, and I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Williamson?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill?
To the bill.
Colleagues, I think we all agree the budget number in this budget bill is not enough, and that we are here to prioritize our kids. I've heard several times today that we have plenty of money in the budget to cover all of our programs and add additional money to the K-12 budget. As a co-chair of a subcommittee that is not education, I want to share what prioritizing our kids looks like for the budgets of other agencies. In public safety, it means that our public safety budget starts out with a 3% deficit for current service level. When we add mandatory spending, like covering the forecasted DOC population, that deficit reaches $38.3 million.
Excuse me, Representative. Representative Mike McLean, for what purpose are you in the queue?
Madam Speaker, if we're not going to allow Representative Post to talk about a different budget, then I would say this is equally not germane to talk about another budget other than the education budget.
Representative, I do believe this is germane. I don't think the comment for Representative Post was about the germaneness of his comments. It was the tone of his comments. Please continue, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, this $38.3 million deficit is before we fund a single substantive bill. It's without funding the investments that we all know we need to make. In the governor's budget, 20 more state troopers, 33 more trooper cars, things that we know we need in our budget to keep our communities safer. It also doesn't fund the promises we made to our communities last session in our justice reinvestment package. We have community partners that have invested in community programs, and we are not, at this moment with this budget, able to make good on our promises to them. So I'm not sure right now where we're finding this extra money in the budget. I'm voting for this bill because I'm prioritizing kids, and I'm willing to make the very difficult decisions we're going to have to make later in session to find the dollars to fund mandatory services. And I know Human Services has the same kind of issue.
Excuse me, Representative. Representative McLean, for what purpose are you in the queue?
By Representative Williamson saying she's voting today, she is prioritizing kids. She's impugning the motives of those of us who vote no. Many of members here have stood up and said they're prioritizing kids and not voting no, and therefore that impugns our motives.
Thank you for your comment, Representative. Representative Williamson, perhaps I believe I am would be more appropriate than impugning that somehow if you are not. So just be careful with your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will. So I'll just finish with this. We are making a decision today in how we want to spend our money. And I simply wanted to add to the conversation what the budget looks like from my perspective and what this vote means to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Colleagues, I know this is a very passionate discussion. Can we just be very careful with our word usage? All of us, please. Further discussion? Representative Doherty.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill?
To the bill.
Part of the K-12 budget is House Bill 2545, which is part of the overall package. And what it provides is that districts will provide lunch free of charge to students who are eligible for reduced price lunches. This will feed approximately 30,000 children. The budget for this is less than $2.5 million. We all know that part of this budget, which deals with reduced lunch, we all know that a full stomach makes a difference in a child's learning, but it goes even further than that. When we were developing this proposal, we met with a lot of the school nutrition people, and they used to come through and talk to us about what they referred to as lint children. And these were kids that would bring in their 40 cents, and it kind of had lint in it because they were getting the money out of their family couches. They also would maybe come in and bring 40 pennies to pay for it. The kids would also face what I call the scarlet cheese sandwich because they owed money for lunches and got that instead of a lunch. As a former high school teacher, I even saw the impact of this years ago. A few years back, one of the classes at Milwaukee High School invited all their teachers to their 30th high school reunion. So our kids, who at the time were 48, one of them came up to me and was talking to me, and he was saying he was now an electrician and his son had just graduated from college. And then he got kind of sheepish, and he said, "I need to apologize." And I said, "Well, what for?" Because he was kind of a good kid. And he says, "I don't know if you remember, but back when I was a sophomore, things were a little tough in my family, and you loaned me lunch money, and I've never paid it back." So 32 years later, he remembered that part of it. And so that's also part of the education process. But I think it's very, very important that this is part of the overall funding package that we have. I think more importantly, though, is to look at the overall thing. Is this an adequate proposal? No. Have we ever adequately funded education? The answer is no. I went through and was dealing with layoffs in 75. I was dealing with I was laid off in 1975, as were 850 other teachers the first day of school because we didn't have an operating levy. So this is over and over and over again. What this provides is, one, lunch for 30,000 kids. It also provides some sort of a stability for districts to be able to go through and bargain now and add later on if the forecast warrants it. And that is something that the stability that they need. For decades and decades, districts have gone through and almost put down two budgets. One budget is what they knew they were going to get from the state, and another budget was hoping money that they would get above that. Unfortunately, they had to go through below those budgets. This is the one thing, they will not be below that budget amount that they've got, and that is a guarantee. So I encourage a yes vote on this. It is a very important bill because it's going to fund education, never adequately. We've never adequately done it, but at least it will give some sort of stability. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Hack.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, per Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution, adequate and equitable funding, the Legislative Assembly shall appropriate in each biennium a sum of money sufficient to ensure that the state system of public education meets quality goals, which means that Oregonians should have the opportunity to develop their unique abilities, provide an excellent, multicultural, nationally, internationally competitive, equitable education for every Oregonian is critical. Oregon students must be competitive and productive citizens. Oregonians must be able to read, write, communicate, and make critical judgments. Oregonians must possess math, science, creative, and problem-solving skills. Oregonians must be stimulated to consider research-proven reforms and methodologies for the improvement of skills and knowledge of all students. Oregonians should continue to evaluate successful programs and foster their replication. Schools must collaborate with other government, private, and social service agencies to meet the needs of our diverse student population and their families. One of the best ways we begin to move toward these goals and the other goals we have committed to is to make sure every student enters school ready to learn and that all students read by 3rd grade. Full-day kindergarten helps get us there, but we must give the districts the money they need to implement it. One of the districts I have in my district needs 5 portables just to house the students they need for all-day kindergarten, not to mention the staffing costs. Another district is concerned about whether or not they will be able to fund all-day kindergarten, which puts them at a great disadvantage. As we all know, full-day kindergarten is not mandatory. My heart aches at the thought that, again, some will have the advantage and the opportunity for a better education than others won't. So again, some of our students who are in rural districts or in districts that simply can't afford to fund full-day kindergarten will be at an advantage over others, simply because we're choosing where to put our dollars. I'd like you to hear from a student. I think his words say it better than mine or any of ours. His name is Alfonso. He's a 5th grader. He loves his school, and he loves his town, and he's proud to be where he's from. And he's really sad to know that his experience is going to be much different than the experience of his sisters who have graduated. As a mother, I can tell you that even the experience of my 2 children has been greatly different in their education. So let's hear from Alfonso. When my sisters were in elementary school, they got to go to music class. I've never even had a music teacher. When my sister Priscilla was a 5th grader, she had 24 students in her class, and I had 33 students in mine. And we're not the largest classroom. When my sisters were in 5th grade, they were doing the math I did in 3rd grade. They didn't do the math I'm doing now until 8th. When my sisters were in elementary school, they had art supplies, paper, and pencils. Now we have to hope that Walmart donates the unsold school supplies to our school because many of our families can't afford to buy them for us and the schools don't have them. When my sisters headed off to middle school, they got to look forward to 6th grade track and field and school activities. I don't get to run track or to be involved in clubs. When my sisters went to middle school, they got to have teachers just for the 6th graders so they can be in one class for much of the day and learn to move into middle school slowly. Next year, my teachers will teach 6th through 8th grade, and I'll be moving in the hallways with older kids right away. When my sisters went to high school, they got to choose from all kinds of different electives and classes. I don't know what electives will be left there for me. My sister was the first person in my family to graduate high school. She had lots of people to help her. Who will help me? When my sister got sick in high school, there was a nurse to help her come back to school safely. If I get sick, who will help take care of me? When my sisters went to high school, we were very proud of them because they were the first people in my family to earn college credits, and they did it right at the high school. Will there be college in my future? My sisters are very successful. They are doing well in their adult lives, and I'm very proud of them. I want to be an engineer. I only get one chance at my education, one chance to be a kid, and one chance to be a student. This is my chance. I need more help to become who I want to be in life. I need more teachers. I need more activities. I need more from my school. I promise you I'll give more when I'm an adult. I'll become a person who...
Excuse me, Representative. Hold on one moment. Representative Hurd yields his time. Please continue.
I promise you I'll give more when I'm an adult. I'll become a person who will change this world for the good. I am smart, I work hard, I give back to my town, and I want to make this world a better place. But first I need to finish school. I know other people helped you become who you are today. Can you please help me become who I want to be tomorrow? Those are the words of 5th grader Alfonso. I just employ you to, and all of us, to just think long and hard when we make these decisions. Because I truly believe a strong Oregon starts with educated children, and we have a responsibility to our children. I urge a no vote today. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Gallegos.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
I want to thank the representative from Salem, Almsville, and Turner for raising the issue of the need for special investments, the issue of equity. And this particular bill, I want to point out, maybe a little bit different. I do want to say I'll be brief. Passing this $7.255 billion budget will increase stability for most districts throughout the state, while also enabling targeted investments in important areas that will impact our students for the betterment of our communities. And I want to speak specifically about a particular community. Currently, only 49% of English language learner students graduate from high school. Did you hear that? Over half of those students do not graduate from high school. We can do better. You can do better. We can help them to do better. With the $12.5 million investment that's included in this budget to support ELL programs, we have the ability to turn around this crisis into a real opportunity for students throughout our state. By approving this budget and later passing House Bill 3499, which lays out the specific policy recommendations, we can enable our schools to specifically improve the impact and quality of education provided to English language learners, ELL students. From requiring uniform budget coding and annual reporting to providing a system of technical supports to targeted districts, these dollars will redefine the way in which we support our students, educators, and schools in the delivery of ELL services. English language learners are the fastest growing student population in Oregon, the fastest growing population. And by making this investment, which is included in this budget, now we are taking a critical step to improve the future of our workforce and the prosperity of our communities. Let's not delay. Let's not delay. You have a chance to make a difference today, so I urge your yes vote on this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, I don't know if you're as confused as I am. One speaker gets up and says it's a cuts budget, and the next person steps up and says that it's not a cuts budget. I've heard that the last week and a half in working on this budget and the Ed Sub and Full Ways and Means, and it's bound to be confusing. The only thing I can do is think back 3 weeks ago in the Ed Subcommittee when we had 3 days, I believe it was, of testimony from school districts all around the state. The only school district, if my memory serves me, that stood up in the hearing and said, this is not a cuts budget for us, because we were fortunate enough that our voters passed an option levy for us, was Portland Public Schools. Every other district that came into the room got up and said, this is a cuts budget. And yet my co-chair said, this is not a cuts budget. So if I'm on the committee and I'm confused, I'm sure the rest of us are confused. All I can do is listen to every one of the superintendents and school board members in my district that said it's a cuts budget. Now, I'll be the first to admit that a school district budget is not a school district budget is not a school district budget. Some are cutting $4.1 million out of their budget based on the $7.255 billion. Others are cutting $2.1 million out of their budget. Others are cutting over $5 million out of their budget. We all understand the budgeting process. All school districts have different needs. They've made different choices over the years, and they all do their own individual collective bargaining. But at the end of the day, most school districts range between 81 and 85% on their personnel expenses, which is a huge amount of their budget. So I could read well over 100 emails, but you guys probably got the same emails. I could read emails from dozens of school districts, but I'm sure each of you got the same emails. And somehow these school districts are telling us, not just me, but all of us, that this is a cuts budget. I am not going to look at the folks in Oregon and say, you're wrong. This is not a cuts budget. $7.255 billion is a great starting point. You must have your numbers wrong. Surely you aren't going to cut 24 teachers. Surely you're not going to be down $4.1 million. You've got to be wrong. But that's all I've heard anybody tell these school districts, including mine, is, no, you're wrong. You're using the wrong numbers. You're not going to have to cut that out of your budget. And they email me back and say, show me the money. Where are we budgeting incorrectly? How are we not going to have money to plan for the next 2 years? Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Representative. For the discussion, Representative Nose.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
So, colleagues, over the past few weeks, I've heard from students and parents, educators, some of you, my own 2 children, my teenagers, my spouse at the dinner table last night, all of whom are school advocates saying that we need to pass a much higher budget for K-12 education. Well, I agree with them. Of course, our schools need more funding. But given our revenue circumstances and our funding challenges, I think the co-chairs of the Ways and Means Committee have done an extraordinary job and a lot of good work to prioritize every available dollar that we can for our classrooms at this time. This is a stability budget for schools. It includes funding for all-day kindergarten, targeted investments that make sure that hungry kids get lunch, and that students with high instructional need and thus high instructional costs are better supported and funded. Now, unfortunately, we've been disinvesting in education since I moved to this great state in the 1990s, and since my 2 teenage children started attending school back in the early part of the last decade. We need to make a much greater investment in education for a whole host of reasons, and not just in K-12 funding, but community colleges and our universities too. But in order to make game-changing investments in our schools without drastic cuts to senior citizen health care or closing a prison, we're going to need significant new revenue and funding resources. And I think when it comes to finding new funding resources, we should not forget that Oregon has the lowest corporate tax burden in the nation. There are numerous large, out-of-state corporations that make millions of dollars in profits in our beautiful state and pay almost nothing in taxes. While our schools are struggling, while we're arguing around the margins around whether it should be $7.255 billion or $7.5 billion, there are over 400 large corporations here in our state that don't even pay the corporate minimum tax. Most Oregonians pay more in taxes than the corporate minimum tax of $150. I believe we're currently 50th in the nation for corporate taxes. We're so far behind every other state that if we moved up to 49th, just one state, we could still raise enough money to fund our schools at the $8 billion and still have the second lowest corporate tax rate in the United States. In order to invest for our young people, make sure that they're competitive for jobs, and to make our state attractive to business and economic development, we have to offer a world-class education system. And we can't expect to provide a world-class education system to our kids or a world-class workforce for the businesses and industry that are here without everyone, including wealthy corporations, paying their fair share. I'm going to vote yes on this budget, and I urge all of you to do the same. But as we do, I hope we ask ourselves, how much longer can our schools afford for our state to have the lowest corporate tax rates in the United States? If we want to do better for our kids, for our communities, for our state, and for our business, for the future workforce that they will be relying upon, we're going to need to have a much more serious conversation about revenue in our state and how we can make sure that those who can afford to pay are paying their fair share. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative, for the discussion. Representative Bueller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the bill?
To the bill.
Colleagues, when I ran for this seat, I made a commitment to make schools a priority. And after being here 8 weeks, I feel even more strongly about our schools and making them a priority. With record high dropout rates and the shortest school year in the nation. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? The highest dropout rate and the shortest school year in the nation. It's clear we need to do more for Oregon kids, which is why I promise to advocate for more money for K-12 and a lot more reform. The proposed funding levels in HB 5017 not only fails to address the existing shortfalls of our education system, but actually reduces per-student funding. To help frame the problem, I want to draw your attention to a letter I recently received from Bend Lapine School Superintendent Ron Wilkinson. In his letter, Ron says, quote, "The co-chair's proposed allocation of $7.255 billion results in an anticipated reduction of 83 per ADMW for Bend Lapine schools. That represents a reduction of $1.67 million from what we'd receive if we are funded at the same per pupil allocation as we're receiving this year. I know the major factor causing that reduction is a projected increase in student caseload for 2015-16 as the state counts for the other half of half-day kindergarten," end quote. Now, despite a 10% growth in available general and lottery funds, our school districts are still seeing a reduction in per-student allocation. Through the years, schools have slipped in rank relative to other priorities, even while Oregon has one of the highest dropout rates in the nation and kids increasingly stay home from school on school days. This is really unacceptable. I think we all feel that. Superintendent Wilkinson elaborates on the impact of these failures further in his letter. Quote, "When talking about questionable performance, it's important to note that Oregon has one of the shortest school years in the nation, with students receiving the equivalent to about one less year in instructional time during their entire K through 12 than the national average. At the same time, the Oregon legislature's prioritization for the use of state available revenue on K-12 has been on a steady decline since the 2003-05 biennium. It's time for a reprioritization of resources for the future and to demonstrate the importance of K-12 education, end quote. Now, I agree with Superintendent Wilkinson. It is time for a reprioritization of our resources. We can do this by providing more money through K-12, and we can start by building the world-class schools and enacting meaningful reforms in this state. The first step is to make education funding a priority. Before we spend money on low-carbon fuel standards, corporate giveaways, and other misplaced priorities, we should address the unacceptable dropout rates, ensure third-grade reading proficiency, and return to a school year from the shortest in the nation. Let's bet on Oregon students and universities before out-of-state green energy investors. I urge you to vote no on House Bill 5017. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. For the discussion, Representative Stark.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill?
To the bill.
Colleagues, it is my opinion that our education system and our school system is a sinking ship. And I believe it's a sinking ship because of inadequate funding and inadequate prioritization. And I say that it's a sinking ship based off of my personal experience at different schools. You see, my favorite thing that I get to do in my everyday life is a project that we do annually called Serve Grants Pass. And it's only a part of my district, but we get thousands of volunteers that come out and do 40 to 50 community service projects every year for their community. It's an amazing community effort. But out of those 40 or 50 projects, at least half of them every year are for our schools. And we go into these schools and we paint, or we first start out by scraping the peeling paint off the walls, and then we repaint these classrooms. And we do project after project for these schools, not just because they don't have the supplies, but they also don't have the funding to staff the maintenance of these schools. Well, in 2013, when, as it was said earlier, the legislature was increasing funding by $1 billion, is what it was said. I wasn't here, so I don't know for sure, because at that point, I was painting a classroom in Southern Oregon. In this classroom, that after our Serve Grants Pass project, about 2 weeks later, a teacher called us up and said, "I'm so sorry we didn't get on the list. Can you come out? We have desperate need for you to bring a team out and paint our classroom." And I get out there and I meet with her, and it turns out that we're meeting in the girls' locker room. And I said, "What in the world's going on? I thought that we were painting a classroom." And she says, "Yes, but the other elementary school down the road, due to lack of funding, they've closed down. And now we've merged all these kids into this one elementary school, and now we have to convert the girls' locker room into a classroom." And then we proceeded, to my outrage, to have a discussion on where we would hang curtains so that these students wouldn't realize they were going to school in a classroom or in a locker room. Well, things have not gotten better. I spoke to several of our superintendents this week about how $7.255 billion will affect them. Most of them said it was a negative for them. One said it was going to keep them on par, but they couldn't make progress. But this specific school, or this school district, pointed out that that locker room that we had painted, now they're having to do that at several schools. And that they're going to have to take the boys' and girls' locker rooms. And fortunately, they have some people that are going to step up and try to actually remove the showers from these locker rooms so the overcrowding can be dealt with in these schools. We need to fund these schools better. The same school district talks about several of their freshman class at the high school that are going to have 40-plus students in their classrooms. We need more funding. We can't put it off. We can't prioritize other things first. We need to fund our students now with more. This budget of $7.255 billion does not address the holes in a sinking ship. It fails to plug those holes, and in fact, it actually makes them bigger, and our children are suffering. I encourage your no vote on this bill.
Thank you, Representative. For the discussion, Representative Parrish.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, for the third time in my tenure as a legislator, I will be a no on the K-12 budget. I appreciate the effort to get us to the largest ed budget we've had, even if this bill doesn't get us to where we need to be. I appreciate the surety for my local districts so they can plan appropriately for next year. As a former school food service director, I appreciate the funding to eliminate the reduced price meals. Having cafeteria workers be debt collectors to hungry children is unacceptable. But have we really done our best work? In 4 years, I have not seen us address the non-essential spending of state agencies. In the checkbook of every state agency is things like out-of-state travel, large advertising budgets, prizes for staff. Are these non-essential items really priorities for funding our state? We've heard today from others about the need to let schools control their own costs. Yet this body undid a piece of negotiated legislation that was supposed to take effect this year, in which schools would have been allowed to buy their health insurance through the exchange, which would have saved millions of dollars to schools who are now saying this budget's not enough. We passed numerous unfunded mandates, and I stand up on this floor and I derailed darn near most of them, because while it has no fiscal impact to the state, it has an absolute fiscal impact to every school district budget if we say, as the legislature, do this, and then we attach no dollars to go with it. We've left on the table a bill to let our universities out of PEB, which we know has been estimated to save $67 million a biennium. This bill also has no accountability mechanisms that say that if we fund at this level, we're going to get better or equal outcomes to what we have now. If we're going to walk down memory lane, let's go back before Measure 5 and 50 when I was a student here in Oregon schools, when we still had funding inequities and teachers went on strikes and faced layoffs. This is not simply an issue about Measure 5 and 50, as we've heard. In fact, go back to the formation of our state constitution. Education funding disparities date back 158 years in the planning of our state. It was designed in a way that actually has created some of the funding disparities we have. So unless we fix the root problem, this budget does nothing to solve those issues. We have roughly $4 billion more in general fund revenue than when I got here 4 years ago in 2011. Where's the money going? And even if the kicker kicks, this is still the largest amount of general fund dollars we've ever had. Other states with similar budgets are getting better outcomes than Oregon. These states prioritize things like accountability and cost reform and increased local control, not top-down education models. Lastly, in an income tax-based state, we cannot continue on a 2 decades-long path of unemployment, higher than the national average unemployment that we currently have. When mom and dad are working and they are paying taxes and they don't need social services, we can reduce other budgets that we're going to talk about this session, and we can increase school funding. Colleagues, we need to have these conversations not in isolation of each other, but is a threaded discussion that when we make a decision here, it impacts something over here in another committee. And I've watched for 4 years as we don't connect the dots really well. We have to get to being better systems thinkers for our state and deal with the issues, again, not in isolation of each other, but as that threaded discussion. That's when we start to solve the problems in our education funding. So for all of those reasons, colleague, I am going to be a no on this budget. It really displeases me. I ran for the legislature to do education, just like a lot of you have. I have 3 children. The year I ran, my kids were losing 15 calendar days off of the calendar. 9 of them academic, 15 for teachers total. Still more days than the kids in Coos Bay. And I asked the question. I said, why should kids in West Linn get a better education than kids in Southern Oregon? And to my surprise, that actually turned out to be a really nice TV ad in a campaign that said Julie Parrish wants to take all the money away from West Linn schools. But why should kids in my district have a better educational outcome than any other child in this state? And I stand by that. And that can show up in as many mailers or whatever as it's going to show from opponents who, come and say that I don't care about schools. But the fact is we are not doing the right thing by our children. This budget doesn't get us there if we're going to continue to send as a body or as directed from the state agency more mandates on schools with no funding not dealing with the healthcare problems of our state.
Excuse me, Representative. Representative Esquivel yields this time. Please continue.
Thank you. And colleagues, on the issues of the benefit side and not having true help for our school districts, the largest train wreck that we've ever seen hasn't even hit this building as it relates to healthcare, and it's going to create a huge sucking sound of dollars out of our state. Where are those dollars going to come from? That's coming. That issue's coming. And hopefully we will deal with that and address it as we look forward at the increased cost of healthcare, the increased cost to schools, and we're not doing the necessary cost reform to make a budget like this work. It is totally disheartening to see people that I know care about education feeling like they either have to vote yes because this is the best we're going to get, or they're going to have to vote no because this isn't enough. And I think all of us care about this issue greatly. But colleagues, it's as much as I'd like to give surety to my districts, and I really actually love that idea, it's only March, going to be April tomorrow. We still have some time to solve some of these issues, to hold our agencies accountable for how they spend their money, to cut some of those non-essential dollars, to start to look at how we really bend the cost curve in healthcare. And my senator, when I go out, my Democratic senator, and we go out and tool around our county together, he's sort of doom and gloom. Senator Devlin just is totally doom and gloom about the budget. We're not bending the cost curve in healthcare. He'll tell you that. He said that in meetings where we have stood together jointly, that we're not bending the cost curve on all of the costs of the state government, and we have to do a better job, or we'll never get to a budget that makes sense for public education. So I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Olson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, I don't believe there's anyone in this floor right now that believes that that they're comfortable with the $7,255,000,000 that K-12 budget is being proposed through this House bill. It has been said that this budget isn't ideal. I, for one, feel very uncomfortable with this proposal over the next 2 years. It's not enough. Let me explain why I think the proposed budget is not enough. 4 years ago, during the 76th Legislative Assembly, we passed Senate Bill 248. You've had some discussion about it today, but I'm going to go a little bit more in detail with you. It was full-day kindergarten. I remember it quite well. The measure came through the committee in which I was co-chaired at the time, the House Committee on Rules. It was sponsored by Senator Mark Hass. Now let me connect the dots between House Bill 5017 and what we did 4 years ago, and how it plays out that $7.255 billion is clearly inadequate. So let me walk you down memory lane. The Oregon legislature mandated school districts to implement full-day kindergarten by the fall of 2015. In the process, Senate Bill 248 essentially changed the funding structure. Currently, the state only pays half the allotted amount per student for kindergartners. Senate Bill 248 allowed school districts who offered full-day kindergarten to be paid at the same rate they received for every other student. School districts who did not offer full-day kindergarten would receive less funding. You see, because of the mandate we imposed on school districts, you have a better understanding of why $7.255 billion is below the grade. I recall talking with superintendents from all 4 of the school districts that touch into my House district, Albany, Corvallis, Jefferson, and Lebanon. I was concerned that this mandate would harm school districts in the future. So what I'd like to do is just take a moment here of sharing just a partial email that the school superintendent from Albany shared with me here. Quote, I believe that full-day kinder is technically still an option for districts, but since everyone is headed that direction, we all feel we need to offer it to be competitive. Other expenses include fixing up and opening mothballed schools and the overhead it takes to run them with an administrator, secretary, custodial, etc. We also will need to hire educational assistants, train staff for teaching full day, purchase curricular materials, furniture, and technology. There are many costs in this change that won't be covered. As this funding level being proposed, we won't be able to mentor new teachers, offer classroom management training for staff, or expand the AVID program for both high schools and middle schools that creates a college-going culture and teaches students how to be successful in school. We are just now getting close to class sizes we had in 2008 and offering a full school year after 5 years of cut days. I would have to jeopardize the quality of education again. The Eugene Registered Guard, if you had a chance to read it last week, had an interesting piece where we're going with this, Madam Speaker and colleagues. It wrote an article entitled, "School Leaders Plead with State Lawmakers to Increase Funding." In an unprecedented letter, all 16 school superintendents of Lane County submitted a letter on Thursday of last week, and they asked Lane County legislators to reject the woefully inadequate K-12 school funding budget proposed. This is a portion of the article. The proposed K-12 funding level is especially problematic in light of the fact that school districts in Oregon are implementing full-day kindergarten next school year, thus serving the equivalent of 28,000 more students, the superintendent said. The funding proposal is simply inadequate to add full-day kindergarten without taking resources away from other grade levels, they said. So in closing, what this measure reflects is an inconsistent behavior. It is vague in purpose, defensive in leadership, and if we are not careful, we'll also lose the little trust that we do have right now in Oregon. I urge a no vote for this, and we cannot afford to break promises.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Buckley, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, colleagues. Colleagues, I think I can say without doubt that every single representative on this floor cares.
One moment, Representative. Representative Springer, for what purpose are you in the queue?
I don't believe I was late into the queue.
I believe you were. I paused, but would you like to speak on the bill?
I would love to. Thank you.
And if anyone else is waiting, the hour is late. Please get in the queue so I have some sense of where we're going here. Thank you, colleagues. Representative Springer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for the grace.
To the bill?
To the bill. Colleagues, we've heard a lot of debate about this, and one thing that I don't doubt is all of us in here care about education. And as I look at this conversation for myself, it's about priorities. So I recently saw something that brought back some memories. 2003 was the first year I was on a school board. My son was a kindergartner, and I ran for an election. By the way, I forgot to call the next morning and find out who won. I didn't know how to do that. I simply, very simply, just wanted to help make good choices for my son. Certainly my question or my thinking evolved over the years, and it became about much more than my son, and I realized that. But at that time, I was pretty naive. I just wanted to make good choices for my son. And I was so excited. I thought I had some ideas, and I wanted to roll up my sleeves and help. So I remember my first school board meeting that we started talking about the budget framework. And you sit down at the table, and you talk about expenditures and stuff. And it was the first moment of really disheartening realization that I had. We didn't talk about programs, we didn't talk about electives, but we really had a leaky roof that was super important because it had already leaked for 5 years. And we discussed what to do with the bus fleet because there had been a recall on some of the buses, and this is a large, fairly large geographic area that these buses run in. So we made the choice to take the buses that were in the outlying areas that were on 55-mile-an-hour roads and bring them in town until we received a retrofit kit because they weren't safe in a rollover. And the assumption was, bring them in town, you're not going 55 miles an hour. And I thought, you gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. We're talking about which buses are kind of better. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. Well, it wasn't too far into that time. We had some budget crunches. I can honestly tell you, I don't know why we had budget crunches. It wasn't the Great Recession. And looking back, I wasn't smart enough to ask the right questions at the time. I don't know why we had a budget crunch then. But I know that we sat in there and we said, based on contract language, we have to send out some pink slips. Now, the pink slips didn't say, you will be laid off. The pink slips said, we are taking care of contractual language, you might get laid off. But in case we do lay you off, you have to have this notice at this time. So the superintendent handed out those notices. I felt bad about it, felt a little disconnected, didn't quite get the gravity of it until I showed up at an event, I think it was a retirement event, shortly thereafter, and had to look those people in the eyes with pink slips. And they said, do you really mean it? Depends. Don't know. And I didn't have a good answer. That was probably the beginning of me changing my philosophy and my attitude, and frankly, growing up and leaving some naivete at the door. We didn't have enough for education. This is prior to the recession. We didn't have enough. We made those tough choices. I remember being about the same time in my son's library one time, because I was that mom that wanted to help make school better. I'm in the library and I'm helping, I guess, close up inventory at the end of the year. This is in the mid-2000s. And I'm going through the books, most of which were 40 years old, some of which were 20 years old. And I said, you don't have a book in the library that represents Bill Clinton as the president. Nope, we don't have those. I go to the encyclopedias that at that time, I don't remember how old. They were so old that I would not have used them. Super old. And I said, what about the encyclopedias? She says, I have $350 in my library budget, and I use that to repair the books. I said, well, this is unheard of. So being shameless when it comes to chatting or talking about kids and getting things for kids, I went into the car dealership where we'd recently bought a new car, and I said, you know what? We need encyclopedias, and I think you can help. We had encyclopedias delivered to us right away.
Representative Barreto yields his time. Please continue.
Thank you, Representative. It was that same time I said, why don't we have more books in here? I spend my $350 to repair the ones I do have. So we started to sponsor a book program. Trust me, I walked through the halls of that school. Adults ran from me. That's okay, I chased them, and I was faster. And we grew our library. And we got nice, hardbound Caldecott winter books in our library, opposed to the free scholastic ones that we were putting tape on. That's a priority to me. That's important. And I find it ironic that I was doing that at the same time we were building our son's library at home. He didn't need the books there. That's when I realized when we're on school boards, it's for the other kids, not necessarily the ones that have a strong advocate in the room. And it's those kids I'm standing here and advocating for right now. This doesn't feel like prioritizing. And when I came here, somebody said, why are you going to the legislature? And I said, well, you know, if I can make good decisions for kids at the local level, I want to make good decisions for kids at the state level. I've been frustrated, and I've been disappointed, and I've been disheartened. I've seen government all around me grow. I've seen budgets increase. I've seen more FTE, more full-time employees coming on. I've seen that all around me. And I see the cuts in the schools getting deeper and deeper and deeper. I have a disappointment as my son leaves school this year on a great path. He's excited. I don't feel success. I don't know that I've made it better. I've sure tried. Anybody that knows me, if you mention Aspire around me, I go ballistic. Just yesterday in committee, I had the executive director of OSAC, send everybody on the committee the lists of their schools that have Aspire so you can call and get involved. I put my money where my mouth is. But I can't support a budget when my school districts are telling me it's a cut. And I can't do enough sponsor book programs. And I can't get enough Aspire volunteers. And I get frustrated when I see the government all around me grow, but not the government or not the schools growing. Colleague, I think we can do better because we care and we want to do better. And once again, I'm willing to roll up my sleeves and do better. And once again, where Springers have put their personal checkbook, I'll put it on kids. I'll put it on kids. Sometimes I have to say no to things. That's okay. But I'm disappointed.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Mike McLean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill. Colleagues, excuse me a moment, Representative. I was very generous in not going to the close, and more people are getting into the queue. So I would just note that it's almost 1 o'clock, and we've had lots of debate. So just saying. Representative, please continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I'm opposed to House Bill 5017. This bill came out of our subcommittee on Ways and Means on a partisan basis. Only Democrats voting for it, Republicans all voting against it. This bill came out of the Ways and Means Committee on a partisan basis. Democrats are voting for it, Republicans voting against it. I predict on the floor today it will likely be the same. There are three main reasons why I urge a no vote. First is our communities all across Oregon are saying that something is wrong with education in Oregon. Madam Speaker, permission to use a visual aid.
Representative McLean asks to use a visual aid, so permitted. Please continue.
Go ahead. Thank you, Tom. Colleagues, these are just some of the headlines we've seen around our state over and over and over. Once again, the headlines are clear. There is a problem in education. For an example, one headline, Oregon posts nation's worst graduation rate for class of 2013. In that article, it quotes that no state ranks farther than us. Now, Idaho didn't turn in a report, so actually we were only 49th, but it counted 49 states. Dead last, graduation rates. Again, article with about low school funding and stagnant achievement. Oregon ranks number 41 in education, group says. Education Week did some surveys. Again, all across Oregon, our communities are saying there is something terribly wrong. Oregon's weakest area is academic achievement, so says Education Week. Oregon's lack of progress, particularly for low-income students, stands out as among the worst in the country. Oregon devoted the equivalent of 2.6% of the GDP to its public schools, the 46th lowest rate in the nation. On and on. Another, empty desks was another article. Points out that low-income students are almost 50% more likely to be chronically absent than Oregon students. At some schools, nearly half the low-income students miss that often, including many, as they list them, are in my district, and for an example, Lapine. It talks about our absenteeism rates. Finally, the Albany Democratic Herald talks about we can spend time trying to point fingers at one another and try to come up with a reason for this woeful statistic. Or we can insist that our educators and state officials dig a little deeper to find new strategies to move the dial. New strategies to move the dial. That has been what our communities have asked us, colleagues, a new strategy to move the dial. Well, there hasn't been permitted in this legislative session an ability to discuss the system itself. All we've been given by the majority party is the ability to discuss the money. Not the system that's broken, just the money. And so today, we're here debating a budget about money only. And that number is opposed, this budget number is opposed by school districts all across Oregon. I'd like to use my other visual aid, Madam Speaker.
Oh, please continue.
Thank you. There we go. Colleagues, as you can see on this visual here, Oregon's shrinking education budget as a percentage of our general fund. The high point came the last time the Republicans were in control of the House and Senate. And since then, under the control of the Democrats, education as a percentage has been sinking. And our colleagues who run school districts have pointed that out. For an example, the Lane County ESD, in a letter to Lane County legislators, have said this: the clear fact is that in spite of the legislature's articulated concern, our state has not been and is not now prioritizing education.
Excuse me, Representative. Representative Hayden yields his time. Please continue.
Thank you. We hear Oregon legislators from all over regions and of all political persuasions profess that education is a priority, but the numbers tell us a different story. Since 2005, which is the farthest bar right there, colleagues, on the left, this is the Lane Education Service District, a letter to Lane County legislators. They point that farthest bar on the left, quote, since 2003-05, state spending overall has increased by 53%. Public safety spending is up 69%. Human service spending has risen even more, 84%. Yet state funding for K-12 education has gone far less, just 35%. The co-chair's proposal will continue this trend of underfunding education compared to other state spending. It would once again reduce a portion of the state's budget dedicated to K-12 schools, at the same time that Oregon school districts are implementing full-day kindergarten and stretching that funding to serve the equivalent of 28,000 more students. We are dismayed at the proposed funding level and the impacts it will have on Lane County schools. Lane County ESD goes on and says, in Lane County school districts, if this proposed budget is approved by the legislature, we will need to begin a difficult conversation with our boards, our budget committees, and our employees and our community members about where to make painful cuts. And then finally, they say this: look, Oregon is not in crisis. The economy is improving. Revenue has increased, and spending on other important state services is proposed to increase in turn. Yet despite the voice support for schools, our state investment in education continues to lag behind other increases. It is unacceptable that, in a time of economic growth, the proposed budget would force schools to cut services to our students yet again. Finally, now that we are in recovery, we just cannot understand how education could be allocated less than its proportionate share of the budget. Please invest some of the growing revenues in our schools. It will pay off in Oregon's future. All of this is a good example of what districts are saying all over the state. Lane County said it because, as you can see with that trend line, there has been declining investments in education. Now, I know the question is, what do we do? Do we vote for this budget? But we've heard here today from many that this is just the start. This budget number is just the start. This budget number is purposeful, colleagues. This didn't come out of thin air. The Ways and Means co-chairs and the subs, they worked, they knew it, they've made decisions. This body, through its Ways and Means, have made decisions about where to spend and how much to spend. This is purposeful. I'll give you an example. In his recent special alert, Representative Phil Barnhart, our revenue chair, stated, and I quote, "Getting to the funding levels that are really needed won't be possible with our current revenue system, where the largest and most profitable businesses pay among the lowest effective tax rates in the nation. Changing that will require robust conversations, starting with convincing our neighbors, local business leaders, and broader communities that putting back enough funding in our school, community college, universities back to reasonable levels is essential for Oregon to prosper. As chair of the House Revenue Committee, I'll keep working hard on legislation to raise funds for education." So what's the answer? Raise funds. Now, Representative Nose said today that our corporate tax rate is the lowest in the nation. That, of course, is disagreed with by multiple reports that rank us at 19th. But the point of his comment today in this budget was that corporations don't pay their fair share. Representative Susan McLean said this is just simply our first step today.
Representative, one moment, please. Representative Neerman yields his time, and if possible, can we refer to the monikers instead of people's names on your speech? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Speaker. And our co-chair, the representative from Ashland, has stood on the floor of this House recently saying that, yes, the funding was inadequate for education, but we need to boldly raise taxes. Colleagues, this is a setup. There are two answers to this crisis in Oregon schools. One is to defund it and demand more taxes out of taxpayers. The other is to grow our economy and let income growth and business growth grow the pie bigger and fund our businesses. Have you ever heard of Measure 66 and 67, colleagues? That bitter, divisive fight, it's coming again.
Excuse me, Representative. Representative Buckley, for what purpose are you in the queue?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, colleagues, the use of the word setup, again, in the previous discussion, there was a use of the word pawns. Madam Speaker, I stand before this body, I stand before my colleagues. I'm a father of 3 kids. I don't use the budget to set anybody up. I don't use anybody as a budget as a pawn. And I would ask my colleague to, if he wishes to make a point that revenue should not be part of the discussion, I would respect that. But however, to impugn my motives or the motives of anybody in this body in terms of our dedication, our passion for doing the right thing for our children, our state.
Thank you. So, Representative, you are standing up to say that you're worried that impugns your motives, and I agree with that, Representative McLean. Could you be more careful, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As we've heard from 4 different colleagues today, this is just the beginning of a discussion for more revenue because schools aren't adequately funded. Juxtapose between one side not being enough money and the other side saying we need more revenue. Well, colleagues, what about making hard decisions? Harry Truman said, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Make hard decisions. But no hard decisions have been advocated here today. Instead, we've heard this is the first step. Representative from Beaverton indicated that we need to have more conversation, he said more conversation about funding. And on and it goes, colleagues. And so, today, Oregonians have a choice. 10 years of leadership with only one answer. Give us more of your money. Or we can reject this budget and say, make the hard choices, prioritize the school funding first and foremost to the point where we say this is what our school districts need, and then whatever's left on what our economy provides, we decide the rest. If we don't do that, colleagues, I fear our failed leadership will lead to more divisive politics. And as we've already heard today, referring to the kicker, my prediction, Oregonians and colleagues who are listening, that it's only a matter of time before the underfund aspect of our schools must demand the kicker. Well, colleagues, that juxtaposition doesn't need to happen. Failed leadership, failed priorities, and a failed budget. I vote no.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that House Bill 5017 be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Representative Wilson moves House Bill 5017 be referred to the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. Colleagues, this is debatable. To your motion, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the opportunity. It has been said on both sides of the aisle today that this money is not enough. And I think everyone here knows that we can do better, and I think we can do better today. And for that reason, I make this motion to re-refer this bill to the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Leininger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the motion.
To the motion.
I believe that we should oppose this motion because this budget, though not satisfying, is a good floor. We could do worse than setting a floor at this level from which we can advocate and fight and apply more money going forward in the session. And I know that I am going to be working hard to make sure we get to a higher number for K through 12 during the remainder of the session by advocating for us to prioritize when we're making spending decisions, K through 12 funding, by making sure we take a close look at existing tax breaks that we may want to extend or new ones, new tax credits people want to create. And also, I believe that we should be looking at revenue. This session, we've heard a lot about the need to prioritize. I'm ready to do the hard work of prioritizing, and I'm ready to do the hard work of establishing a good floor now, and that's why I believe that we should, that's why I oppose this motion and think that we should move on to a vote on the merits. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Davis. To the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the motion, colleagues, we've heard a lot today from all over the state, and we've learned, and I want to thank you all for sharing the local stories of how this budget will be inadequate and how we do have the funds, and we have not passed any other significant budgets this session. This should be the first one we pass at an adequate level. Please, let's send this back to committee. Let's get it right. And let's do it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Parrish.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To the motion, I
To the
just want
motion.
to I just want to quickly put on record, I support the idea of sending this back to committee. Colleagues, the most expensive piece of our ed budgets is the healthcare piece of their budget. And we have a chance to go back this session, look back at the policy we passed in 2012 that got rescinded in 2013, but look at moving our public teachers into the exchange. There are really great programs there, reduce the cost of schools. And then if that's still not enough, then I will have the conversation about revenue. But we have not done enough on the cost reform side. Sending this back gives us the opportunity to address the biggest piece of where the cost increases are coming from. I urge a yes on this motion.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Hack. Excuse me, she's out of the queue. Further discussion on the motion to re-refer to the Committee on Ways and Means? Seeing none, Representative Wilson, would you like to close? He does not. This is a motion to re-refer the bill back to Committee on Ways and Means. Those of the opinion that the motion should pass will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will open the voting system. The motion to refer House Bill 5017 to re-refer to the Committee on Ways and Means, having not received a constitutional majority, is declared failed. We return to the queue for further discussion on the main motion for the bill, House Bill 5017A. Representative Hoyle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
To the bill?
To the bill. Colleagues, I am heartened to hear today from both sides of the aisle how much we want to invest in our children and our schools. We moved here to the state of Oregon when my daughter was going into first grade based on the reputation of the school district here in Oregon that we moved into, the 4J School District. We got here, and every year that my child was in school, my children were in school, we had cuts. It's why I got active in fighting for bond measures, in writing my legislators, in coming up to this Capitol, and eventually in running for office. Now, I know that every single one of us wants more for our kids. And I think the representative, well, I know the representative from the Mountain Hood area and the Columbia Gorge said we need to get serious about getting our districts what they need, that we have the resources in the general fund. And there are resources in the general fund, but we are going to be sending out, when we get the May forecast, probably between $350 and $400 million from that general fund. My colleague from District 55 said that we need to be able to make tough decisions, and that our side, the majority party, hadn't talked about making tough decisions. Well, I believe that the representative from Portland's West Side did talk about making tough decisions in public safety. I can tell you that as it stands right now, before we send out $350, potentially $400 million, we're $140 million short in the human services budget. We're incredibly short in the public safety budget. So let's be crystal clear about what we're doing here. This is a floor, meaning that no matter what happens, we will not send any less to our kids. And any revenue that we do get, 40% of that will go to our kids. We've not done that for any other budget. Now, for those of you who are new and haven't had to make these choices, I'll tell you, when we come to look at that human service budget, when we come to look at that public safety budget, when we come to look at potentially having to close a prison, I'll tell you what, those are tough choices.
And those are very difficult choices to make, but we prioritized our kids. The Statesman Journal said it, you know, in terms of where else would we cut if we were to add that money back without knowing what's going to happen in that May forecast, without knowing what that general fund looks like. After sending out $350 to $400 million, they said these steps are inconceivable. For instance, the state should invest far more in mental health care, not less. Mental illness is a public safety issue as well as a social one, an educational one. Our seniors, our most vulnerable citizens. The Statesman Journal said, so against that backdrop, the legislative leaders' proposed school budget to 2015 to 2017 looks darn good. For the sake of Oregon students, legislators should approve it promptly. Is it enough? No, it is a floor. I don't think it looks good. But I'll tell you what, it looks a lot better than what we potentially will be able to do, and I will not take 1 cent less. And my colleagues, what I would say is, I'm glad to hear how strongly you support more funding for schools. I am glad to hear it. And after the May forecast, I'm going to come to you and ask you to make tough decisions. Make tough decisions about where we are going to invest those dollars. Make tough decisions about how we get more money for our schools, how we get more money for people, the most vulnerable Oregonians, and how we get more money to invest in keeping our streets safe. So when we talk about the tax structure in Oregon, understand we are the only state in the union with the kicker. And when you're trying to estimate how much money we'll have, the economy is getting stronger. And because of that, we're looking at a kicker that could devastate our general fund. So unlike the federal government, we cannot operate at a deficit. We have to work within the budget we have and the funding we have and the money that we have. And so what is prudent is to pass this budget early to have certainty and also to ensure that there's a trigger so 40% of all new funds go directly to education. We have not done that for any other budget.
Excuse me, Representative. Representative Gorsuch yields his time. Please continue.
And I came here to fight for kids, and I will not leave this building without making sure that we get every cent possible into my school districts, into the Lane ESD, into Bethel, into 4J, into the Junction City School District. I will fight until the day we sine die to make sure that our kids get the resources we need, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you, because I know in your hearts you want what's best for kids, and that means putting our resources where it matters. Thank you, colleagues. I urge an aye vote.
Please, no clapping, but thanks for the sentiment. Seeing nobody else in the queue, Representative Buckley, would you like to close?
Well, heck, Madam Speaker, I think the Majority Leader did a pretty darn good close for me. I'll just say thank you for the discussion. I have no doubt whatsoever that every representative on this floor, every senator in the other chamber, cares passionately about education, cares passionately about our kids. Looking on the brightest side I can tell you, I'm ready to look at budgets. I've gone through this budget so many times. If there's other areas that you think that we can cut, please come. Let's talk about it. Get in your subcommittees and talk about it. Come forward with proposals. I hope you'll be open to discussions on how we resolve this as a whole for the betterment of our kids. I'm haunted, just like the representative from Salem, Ombudsman Turner, who read that great letter from the student. I'm haunted by a visit of a student from Road Community College I had in 2008 who sat in my office and looked me in the eye and said, every year I've been in education in the state of Oregon, I've had less. I can't stand that. I can't stand it. I don't think any of you can stand it either. We're committed to work hard. We're committed to do everything possible we can to turn the situation around for our students and for the future of our state. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate everything the care you bring to this debate and what you want to get accomplished, and I am determined to do everything possible to get to the best possible outcome by the end of this session. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Those who are of the opinion the bill should pass will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Clerk will open the voting system. House Bill 5017A, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Chair requests unanimous consent that the rules be suspended and that the bills remaining on today's third reading of House bills be carried over to their proper place on the Wednesday, April 1st, 2015 third reading calendar. Is there objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Final reading, memorials and resolutions. Bills, reports, and other business lying on the table. First reading of Senate bills.
Senate Bill 20 relating to minimum energy efficiency standards. Senate Bill 248 relating to sales of timber from state lands and declaring an emergency. Senate Bill 250 relating to veterans and declaring an emergency.
Bills read first time and passed to the Speaker's desk for referral. Colleagues, I know it's late. Is this Group A up in the gallery? Sign? Do I need who's Green Acres? All right, up in the rear gallery, folks who were able to join us for the end of the debate. Green Acres from Lebanon, guests of Representative Sherry Springer. Welcome to your capital. Second reading of Senate bills. Third reading of Senate bills. Other business of the House. Other business of the Senate. Orders of the day have been completed. Announcements. We've got some chairs in the queue. Representative Barnhart.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have a long agenda today. We will not be able to complete it. The committee will begin at 2 o'clock. Please be prompt so we can get as much done as possible.
House Revenue meeting at 2. Thank you, Representative Barnhart. Representative Smith.
Speaker, colleagues, your Joint Committee on Ways and Means General Government is going to reschedule for today. So go have a good lunch, and we'll take care of business in the next week or so. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Further announcements. Representative Lively.
So the House Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee will meet at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Representative. Vets and Emergency Services at 2. Representative Fagan.
Consumer Protection and Government Effectiveness will also meet at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock for Consumer Protection. Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Clem.
Madam Speaker, rural communities will also meet at 2 o'clock.
Rural communities at 2. I see a trend. Thank you, Representative. Further announcements. Remonstrances. Colleagues, we have some remonstrances. Representative Mike McLean.
Thank you, colleagues. Oregonians, I want you to know today that you heard exactly the game plan. It was started from the beginning and it was held to the end. The majority party wants your kicker. Hear it clear, Oregonians. Hear it clear. They passed the budget today and they want your kicker. We heard Representative Nose today said that corporations don't pay their fair share. Oregonians, when was the last time we heard that? Measure 66 and 67. Remember the commercials? They're back, and it's begun. Even though we have the tax increase from Measure 66 and 67 already in the coffers, it's not enough. The only answer that the majority party gave us today and is consistently given us is they want more money. Oregonians, colleagues, members of the Senate, this will become the great debate for the rest of this year and in 16. Do you want a government that never ends? It's the insatiable appetite for more of your money, for revenue. Or do you want a government that will make hard decisions on the money we have and budget according to priorities? Today we heard that the majority party is sticking to its old, tired game plan of demonizing the rich in business, minimizing Republican opposition, and advocating for more money, and it begins with your kicker. Oregonians, take note. It's just begun.
Thank you, Representative. For the remonstrances, Representative Springer. For the remonstrances, adjournment, Representative Krieger, 11 a.m., Wednesday, April 1st, 2015.
Oh, gracious. Madam Speaker, I move the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Wednesday, April 1st, 2015.
Representative Krieger moves the House adjourned until 11 a.m. Wednesday, April 1, 2015. Without objection, the House is adjourned.